Welcome to the Rider's Edge podcast, a platform to share conversations about the health and wellness of horse and rider. I'm your host, Farley Schweigert. Hey y'all! Today I thought we would get super sciencey about pain. I just want to start off by saying I'm so happy to be talking to you today. This podcast has been just a fun little passion project of mine, and I am so thankful that you've enjoyed it as much as I have and are helping me grow the conversation by sharing it out and sending me feedback about what you like and what you want to hear and things like that. Please keep that feedback coming. That helps me bring in new guests and new ideas and have conversations that will help you and your horse get to your goals. So today I thought we would talk about pain. We've talked about it several times before, but I really wanted to kind of dive in deeper into the science of pain today. I wanted to do this because in this COVID world that we live in, while the media, the Facebook, and everything in between is harping on the healthcare system and COVID, there are still everyday regular health problems going on. I saw on the Facebook today that a friend of mine had her appendix out. My people who are on the front lines of healthcare right now, they are still dealing with everyday problems of patients who have had strokes, patients who are having fractures, patients who are rehabbing from surgeries prior to this pandemic. And so life is continuing to move forward even with what's going on as we are sheltering in place and quarantining and everything in between, trying to do our part to help stop the spread of COVID-19. There are still everyday health concerns going on. There are still people who have low back pain. There are people who are dealing with autoimmune issues, chronic pain issues, and I've even been told about healthcare systems shutting down that are not in areas that are hot spots, that they are prepared and for that, and luckily that plan has not needed to be enacted, but because all the resources have shifted over and people are electing to not go through with procedures that while may not be elective, are not life-threatening procedures or procedures that just have to be done right now. You know, if you are planning on having a total joint replacement while you would be in a lot of pain, you could put that off to a later date if it is for a reason of chronic pain. So let's chat. How does pain work? Here's how it works. You get a signal in a part of your body, in the periphery of your body. Those nerves send a signal to your spinal cord. Your spinal cord acts as an amplifier, and it can do one of three things. It can send the signal at the intensity that it was sent to it. It can make a decision to downplay that signal and send it on up to the brain, or it can amplify that signal and send it on up to the brain. The brain reads that signal, decides what the result is, and sends that signal back down, and your body goes and adjusts from there. So there's a loop that happens, and that loop has a lot of players in it, has a lot of factors that affect it. How you perceive pain not only happens from a physical and neurological standpoint, there is an emotional aspect to it. Um, there is a psychological, there's a belief, how you were raised. Uh, has to it has to do with your interpretation of pain. There's a lot of different factors. The overall stress on your system. Um, are you feeling that pain after getting 4 hours of sleep for a week, every night for a week, because you were working a convention, your yearly convention for your organization? Or did you feel that pain after, or being on vacation where you're catching up on your sleep because you're having a sleepcation and you're getting your 8 to 10 hours of sleep depending upon your needs, and your body's catching up and well rested and well nourished because you're eating right, getting movement, all those kinds of things. So the systemic stressors in your body have a lot to do with how you perceive pain as well. So within that loop and all those factors on that, things can go haywire. Today we're going to talk about, throughout all this, we're going to talk about the spectrum of pain, and we're going to go from the tough cowboys, cowgirls don't cry, if I'm not bleeding, I'm not broken, I'm not going, to the more hypersensitive, sometimes called delicate, sometimes called wimpy, can be judged for feeling pain, talking about pain, that kind of thing. For me, I like knowing where the boundaries of the lane are so that I can figure out how to navigate the middle of it. Doesn't always work out that way in my life, but I try. And I think in this situation, seeing the two extremes, you can kind of navigate in the middle and think about your own perception, your own beliefs, how you perceive pain, how you interpret it, how you deal with it. So, as we're talking about that loop, a lot of things can happen. Even within that loop of the pain signal gets sent to the spinal cord sends it up to the brain sends it back down what to do. Wires can get crossed. We just talked about how it can be upplayed, dramatized, or even downplayed, or just sent as normal. Pain is just an alarm to get the body to notice something, to get the body to do something. You know, like if you're sitting on the bleachers at a horse show or a rodeo, and you've been sitting there a long time, your body will send signals from either your low back or your hips that you've been sitting there for a long time, and we need to move and change positions or get up and walk around. And depending upon the type of signal, how your brain interprets it will determine your action. Do you shift over from one hip to the other? Do you stand up in place and put your hands on your hips and stretch back? Do you say, okay, I've got to go walk around? Different actions will happen depending upon, like we said, how the signal's sent, how it's interpreted, and how the resulting action needs to happen. This alarm system is just that, it's an alarm. The alarm has a function, and that is to tell us something's going on. So if you think about your morning alarm on your phone, for some people, the first chirp or blast of it, you shut it off, you sit up, you get out of bed, you start your routine. On the even more sensitive side to that would be kind of middle of the road in this scenario. On the more sensitive side of that spectrum, you wake up before your alarm, you sit up, you turn off your alarm before it even goes off, you start your day. To the duller side of that alarm, you hit snooze. You roll back over. Snooze goes off again. You hit it again, and then you get up. And even a duller side of that would be having multiple alarms set, hitting snooze in those alarms, and having it timed out to the ultimate last minute that you have to roll out of bed and get the horses fed and get to work on time. Don't ask me how I know that last scenario. Oh, goodness. So, depending upon how you respond to alarms, will change your sensitivity. And again, that has to do with a lot of different factors. It has to do with how your body is. If you're getting good rest, if you are eating right, well hydrated, or if you have been very stressed with getting very few hours of sleep, running on fast food, and different systemic chronic stressors can make you more sensitive to a pain. Conversely, if you have been well rested, if you are getting proper amount of sunshine, water, fruits and vegetables, pain may come and not be as big of a deal to your system. Over time, how you deal with that sensitivity, whether it's up or down, can create a new habit in your body. And for people who end up with chronic pain or have chronic pain conditions such as fibromyalgia, lupus kind of gets grouped into that. Some of these autoimmune conditions that have a chronic pain condition to it. What happens with those people's systems is they get to vibrating at a higher frequency. And the ceiling, so if you imagine you have this frequency and it's just vibrating, and it is not very far from the top end. And so people who have chronic pain, their systems are more hypersensitive, so it doesn't take as much to send their pain through the roof, through the ceiling there. Conversely, somebody who is not dealing with chronic pain or an autoimmune condition or anything of that nature, their frequency is lower, and it takes it's a longer journey up to the ceiling, to the top, to break through that ceiling of pain. And so when you get into those kinds of scenarios, people with chronic pain, it doesn't have to be an autoimmune issue. It can be chronic orthopedic pain. For people who have had low back pain for years, they can have that hypersensitivity to where other things go off. And it doesn't even have to be low back pain, but low back pain is one of the most common conditions in this country. So how your body deals with that over time can create a new habit. And so a paper cut can become an even bigger deal, for example, to somebody whose system is hypersensitive. On the other side of that, somebody who has dulled that alarm and it takes a lot longer to hit that ceiling of pain. For example, people who practice karate are able to train their systems, their minds, that is not pain they're feeling when they break the board. Even though that whole system, that loop we talked about earlier, continues to happen, it is interpreted differently. in the brain, and so they don't feel pain, even though it's still there. So habits can go one way or the other, just like the spectrum we've talked about earlier. We can be hypersensitive, or we can dull everything out. Also, how you are brought up about pain can determine your interpretation of it. We've talked about that already today. If you were brought up in a culture, and a lot of us were that listen to this podcast, I'm one of them, where you have to be tough and you don't cry. For me, I was often the only girl in the rope pen growing up, so I took on that bravado of trying to be tough and do whatever the guys did or outwork them and that kind of scene, right? Whereas on the other side of that, if you were brought up and given a lot of pampering or a lot of attention, and not that, oh, blow on it and go on, but no, let's stop what we're doing and make it better. Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? That can change how you perceive pain, and if your perception has changed, how you deal with it and activate through that can change. For me, I remember being in high school, and I was at a very big barrel race and had 2 horses there. And I ran my first horse, and I didn't just hit the first barrel, I ran over it very well. And my next run, I'd drawn up, like 20 horses apart or something super close, at one of those ginormous barrel races. So I came out of the arena and had to walk it off, right, and get on my next horse and get ready and to run. I didn't hit the barrel, by the way, in the second horse. Got my horses put up, went and hung out with my friend, sat down in the bleachers, and I looked down at my leg, at my right leg, and I had blood all over the front of my jeans. I was like, oh, well, this isn't good. And again, I was in high school. We went and found my mom, and anyway, ended up back at our doctor's office back home and getting stitches in my shin. And they were prepping me and on the table, and he put the stitches in, and I didn't cry. I don't remember if no, I do remember. Yeah, he did put, give me shots to deaden it and whatever. And I just never flinched. And he was like, you didn't cry. I was like, of course not, because that's how I was raised. Oh. So those habits happen when we respond to our kids when they're young and growing up, and how they perceive their parents to respond to pain, how their parents treat them to respond to when they have a painful experience. And so those things can shape our outlook and how we deal with things. There's a lot of other wires that can cross and uncross and recross and go haywire and all sorts of stuff. Pain can change how our body decides to move. It can reroute the map of movement in our body. So if you've ever felt like I have a joint out of place, first off, let me say this. Joints, our body is so brilliantly designed, so magnificently made. Joints don't come out of place unless a force acts upon them. Now, they can feel out of place. They can feel wonky or hinky or weird. And the map in our brain of how we're supposed to move gets blurred. So if you were sitting there looking at an old school map they still make the paper maps. I'm here to tell you that because I still use one. And you spill your coffee on it or whatever, and the map gets blurry. The ink runs and fades, and the map gets blurry. That can happen. Pain can have that happen in our brains on how we move. So it can make you feel like something is out of place. A couple of years ago, I got bucked off real hard, and I landed right on my SI joint, and my whole right hip. Days later, turned black. It was quite a deal, actually. Quite amazing. I had no idea it could turn like that, turn that many colors. But I'll chalk it up to my southern fair complexion. But about 2 days later, after I'd gotten bucked off and decided that I was, had rolled around in the sand and decided that indeed I had not died and everything was okay. 2 days later, the vertebrae in my low back and my lumbar spine felt grindy, like that they were just grinding on each other. They didn't feel out of place because, again, you have to have a force act, and I did have a force act on me, but it just felt grindy and out of place. Went and had some x-rays pulled, and they were negative. Nothing was wrong. Everything was fine. Having that knowledge, I was like, okay, we have the pictures of it. Now we have to remember that we're okay. And that too shall pass, and we'll work through that. So again, like we talked about earlier, pain and damage do not match. You can have damage in your body and not have pain. You can have pain and not have damage. So much so that in the clinic I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of patients that come in and say, my doctor told me that my MRI said this. My doctor told me that my x-ray said this. I have a bulging disc. I have degenerative disc disease. Just like pain is not a good correlation to damage, neither are our images. Our images are just like what we've talked about today with pain being an alarm. It is strictly an image. And we have to, as patients and clinicians, have to take all of the other factors. We're seeing a pattern here that we are, today I'm going to say we're complex, not complicated. I say that often about myself, that I'm complex, not complicated. That's why I'm laughing. But the image is strictly there to do just that, give us a picture of that local location in the body. Research has shown that 57% of 20 to 50-year-olds with no hip pain will have cartilage and ligament tears. 57% of 20 to 50-year-olds with no hip pain will have cartilage and ligament tears. 37% of 20-year-olds with no pain have disc degeneration in their spine. These are little factoids from evidence-based research where they have done research of taking images of people and correlating them to their clinical symptoms. So that's why I say you've got to have people on your team that you trust, that you can have these kinds of conversations with to get the whole picture. I've had clients for years come in and say, I have a bulging disc on, and I'll say, okay, what side? It's on the right side. Okay, so tell me about your symptoms. Well, my left leg hurts and I have this local pain here on the left side of my low back and down into my hip, but I have a bulging disc. Well, those two things don't G-haul. I'm not arguing that you have a bulging disc. Images happen in black and white, and they are there, but that is not what is causing the pain or the symptoms. So it takes looking through all of the factors to come up with the best plan for you. So now that hopefully I have shed some light on how pain works, all of the factors involved with it, the two different kind of spectrums, and how things can go from being hypersensitive to being a lot duller, that people can perceive pain as I need to tone it down, I don't need to listen to it and move on, or I let it run my life and I can't do my activities with my family, I can't work at my job the way I need to because of pain. So understanding how it works, why it works, what it's actually there for, and how poor of a correlation it has to giving us any real information about what's going on in our body. With the exception, studies have shown that acute pain that happens right after an injury, has a slightly higher correlation, but not a true definite correlation to the amount of damage going on. Just a higher correlation. And if you think about that, that makes sense. How many times have you heard about somebody having a traumatic accident and they don't feel any pain till the next day? Or somebody having a lot of pain from an accident but didn't end up with anything traumatically wrong. You know, those kind of different scenarios. So pain is definitely something we need to have a conversation about, and it's something you need to evaluate within yourself, and I hope that understanding the mechanics of how it works, the factors that influence it, you can sit back and look at yourself. Hopefully, you're in a position to do that, to where you're not having an high amount of pain right now, or it's something that you can sit back and take stock in right now. And so when situations arise in the future, you can understand them better and get through them better. And if you are in a position right now that you are undergoing a lot of pain, this is still helpful information. You can evaluate what's going on, different factors, different ways you have handled that pain in the past, and can change what you're doing with it. Because what can we do with pain? After we understand and reevaluate our perception of it, our interpretation of it, and our action plan with it, we can alter things by movement. Okay, Farrells, of course you're a physical therapist. You're going to say we need to move. I don't want to move. I'm right there with you. But that is why we have to have this conversation. We have research backing that movement, stressing different tissues in the body will lead to more positive results. So hear me out. We know that when we have acute low back pain and we want to just crawl in bed, and they say, well, that's the worst thing that can happen for you. Well, it is. But in my opinion, you get a short window. You can go crawl in bed and let everything calm down and bring that sensitivity level down. But then you got to get your tail up and move. We have research backing this. That's why people often will say walking is one of the best things for low back pain. It's a very gentle, easy way to get everything moving and grooving again, because a lot of times tissue shuts down. And when tissue shuts down, it doesn't work right. And when the body is so smart that it will find a way to get the job done, no matter how it has to get that job done. And so it will start doing this process a different way because some of the tissue is shut down, and it doesn't know how to turn that back on, because that protection mode happens in that tissue, and then it just kind of lingers there and it stalls out and it stays. So moving correctly, stressing other parts of those muscles to work again, get out of that protective mode and do their primary job, will help decrease pain overall. So I've been battling some right hip pain. Long story, we've talked about SI issues, hip issues, all that good stuff. And it was bothering me earlier this spring, and I got to the timed event, and I was talking with D, my buddy, about, my hip was a little grouchy, and I wasn't looking forward to standing on my stool that I stand on during the performance, because my hip was going to get cranky, and the Lazy E is a very large place, so there's a lot of walking, a lot of standing during the timed event. And after doing some evaluation and things, we started working on my multifidus, my low back muscles, activating them correctly, which is a very mental exercise along with physical. And by working through activating some of these deeper muscles in my low back, my hip pain went away. Now, my hip pain has been there on and off for a year, and I've done different things, different self-treatments. Like I've said many times on this podcast before, physical therapists, healthcare providers we're the worst patients. Yeah, I'm just not even going to sugarcoat it this time. We're pretty bad at being a patient. But this one in particular, she's getting better at it. I'm not hard-headed, I'm just determined. But by activating those tissues, like I said, it took the stress off of the tissue around the right hip, and had no pain through the first performance, had no pain all weekend, but did consistently work through starting to activate those muscles. And the pain went away. Now, the pain in my right hip, from a time standpoint, would have been labeled as chronic. And I was a good kid for several weeks after the timed event and worked on those exercises every day. Till about a week and a half ago. I was like, oh, I'm doing so good. I'll just run to the barn and go ride 3-head and do this and do that and blah, blah, blah. Well, that right hip pain started creeping back in. So guess what? Farrell's got back on her exercises and will be less hard-headed this time about it and more determined to continue to put the good things in there so that other tissues can calm down. As we calm down, we have less inflammation. We're healthier overall, which will help us continue to keep all of our systems healthy. And the other thing you need to realize about pain is that it is an individual response. That's why it's so important to have these sciencey conversations about it, know what's going on, and then you've got to really do some diving deep and understanding your experiences and how your body works so that you can work with your team to help you get better. It is as individual as putting different bits on a horse. You may have a set of bits that you really like that work well for you, and you may meet a horse that they don't work on at all. My last good barrel horse, she ran in Hackamore. We worked in different things, but we competed in a Hackamore. The horse I'm currently bringing along right now, it's off the track, and so he was brought up differently, right? But the few times that I've put him in a side pool to see how things are and mix things up, he hated it. Like, I just completely hated it. Now, that's another conversation for another day, but just to show you that, I mean, it is an individual response. It is just as individual as you may have the greatest bit in the world, but it doesn't work for that horse, and it works for another horse. Or it may sit in your barn for years, even though you really like it and you work well with it. You may not have an individual for years that works well with that bit. So I say that to say this: be very cautious of just getting advice from your buddies or from the Facebook or anything like that, because your journey is unique to you, and somebody else's journey is unique to them. And while getting their knowledge is important, what worked for them may not work for you. And it may work for you, but because we are such unique individuals, and I'm here to tell you that after practicing this long, the human factor is real. That's why we have to put art with science. The art of putting all of these facts together to help make sound scientific decisions is so very important, whether we're talking about your health care or your horse's veterinary care. So be careful of sitting around at the bar griping about low back pain and taking the advice of 3 people there and using it all for you. It may make everything completely worse. It doesn't mean that that's a bad treatment. It just didn't work for you. Or a treatment that worked for you may not work for your neighbor down the street. We are all individuals, and our pain responses and interpretations and action plans from it are as unique and individual as we are. So I hope this conversation today helps you understand how pain works, factors that influence pain, and things that we can do to get out of pain or to change it. If you are on the side of the lane, that is the tough kid, the macho man, the cowgirls don't cry, cowboys don't cry side of the spectrum, I typically land on that side of the spectrum as well. I do want to caution you in of that. Really take stock of what your body is telling you, and then decide what to do with it. Take down some of those walls, some of those shields, and really listen to what your body is saying, because always brushing pain down or under the rug in certain situations will not serve you at all. The more I learn about pain, the more I learn about the body, I really start evaluating more than I did what it's trying to tell me. Now, I'm not trying to make anybody into a hypochondriac with this conversation whatsoever. I'm just trying to make you more aware of what's going on so that you can make a better decision for yourself. So if you're on that side of the lane, really, really do some self-inventory so that when something comes up, you can go through what's going on and make sure you're making the right decisions for the situation. On the other side of the lane, if you are somebody who deals with chronic pain, or you know from this conversation or even before this conversation, I'm very sensitive to pain. I have a low pain tolerance. It's something that is an issue for me. You can use the same mechanism. Really understand your factors of what influences your pain. You know that your body deals at a higher frequency, and understand that you're okay. You are safe. You are not in danger, and you're going to work through that situation. Whether it's with a physical therapist, whether it's with your doctor, depending upon if you do have a full-blown chronic pain situation. Chronic pain it's a real thing. It is something that people live with every day and are working hard to work through. And I am by no means making light of it. But do know that by understanding how it works, you can help yourself get back to a more active life and a life well lived. I've had this conversation with many clients who have chronic pain, and by having knowledge, they are empowered to understand their body and their experience better and to work through some things. So I hope you hung out with me for this super sciencey, super intricately woven conversation about pain. And I hope this helps you understand what's going on with your body. And I hope that it will serve you in helping someone that's close with you as well. Because we all need to be good stewards of our health and good stewards of each other. We're all in this together, and the more that we can help everybody move forward, then we all win. So thank you as always for tuning in and hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. I really enjoy bringing these conversations to you, and super excited about where I'm going with Rider's Edge. So thank you again. And as always, I will see you down the road. Thank you for listening to Rider's Edge Podcast. For show notes and other thoughts, head over to ridersedgetherapy.com. If you would like to stay connected and continue the conversation, head over to my free Facebook group, Rider's Edge Health and Wellness for Horse and Rider. Thanks for continuing the conversation, and as always, I will see you down the road.